Cool. So, yeah, to kick things off as our members are joining in, this is a collaborative event with the Prepare for VC community and the Startup Grind Network. So Startup Grind Boston in specific, Startup Grind is an organization that started out in Silicon Valley, has 500 different chapters around the world. And the Boston chapter, sponsored by Brex, corporate credit card for startups, and ShipQuid, which I'm actually going to mute everyone now. Feel free to unmute along the way. Sorry, yeah, and ShipQuid, which helps you find, helps you organize among your sales team and get everybody on the same page with who your customers are, how you get in front of them. And yeah, and then Prepare for VC, we have an online community. So I'll post that in the chat as well. We're hosting different events, resources. We have a 16-week accelerator program. And yeah, and always, like to bring on experts like Xavier here today to give showcases and workshops and really, dive into his expertise is on the growth side with Ambrose Growth Business Consulting. And yeah, and excited for his workshop today. Really, yeah, I joined one of his books clubs the other day. Definitely check it out if you haven't already. And yeah, and we're gonna keep this interactive too. It's gonna be a workshop style presentation, but we're also gonna keep the chat open for questions and comments, and open up towards the end as well for anybody to unmic and ask questions, directly as well. And with that, yeah, I'll turn it over to Xavier here for his introduction and presentation. And everyone else, please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Share LinkedIn's or what your startup's working on, and we can get started here.
Cool, thank you very much, Jason. And as Jason said, please do introduce yourself in the chat, or just unmute yourself if you prefer. We are a small group, so let's keep it interactive. My name is Xavier Lederer. I'm a business growth coach. So my passion is to help companies identify their growth roadblocks and help them remove them so that they can grow faster and with less pain. So there are overall often 5 to 6 main roadblocks that companies face. And I sense I asked some of you to fill out a question. I think I asked all of you, but 8 of you did it, which is really helpful. And that will help us understand the roadblocks of the people in the room. And the goal for me was to make sure that the content of this presentation fits the needs of the audience. So the first question was, select your 3 most significant business challenges that, if resolved, would accelerate your success. And you have here about 10 different answers, a little bit less. The first bucket are roadblocks related to strategy definition and strategy definition and alignment around strategy on the one hand, and execution of the strategy on the other hand. That is typically these are typically the 2 biggest roadblocks I see with companies, regardless of their size, funny enough. The phrase I hear the most from entrepreneurs and CEOs is, I don't have a culture of accountability, which is in that bucket. The second bucket is about cash flow. Cash flow is sometimes linked to execution issues, but sometimes linked to cash management, which is one of the things we tackle with my clients. In this case specifically, there are a few issues around startup funding, which is not my specialty. So I'm not going to focus on startup funding at all today. And the third bucket that you can see here is something I see often with growing companies is issues related with talent. either internal talents or external talents with outside partners. Now, today, I want to focus on the biggest bucket on this list, which is strategy, alignment on strategy, and making sure that we execute on the implementation of this strategy. So feel free to unmute yourself, ask questions. Jason will manage the chat, so you can ask questions through the chat as well. So strategy and execution. I want to focus on execution, but I want to start with strategy, because the way you phrase and structure strategy will define how well you will implement it. So let's start from the beginning of strategy. What is strategy? And since we're in Boston, let's go with a Harvard professor. Michael Porter's strategy definition is: strategy is the creation of a unique and valuable position involving a different set of activities different from your competitors. So there are three key words in this sentence. The first is it is unique in the eyes of your customers, and customers is actually the key word here. It is valuable from a profit perspective, and it is different from your competitors. So we have customers, competitors, and the money, the cash or the money engine. So there are three key questions that need to be answered in order to define a strategy based on this definition. So the first question is, who is your core customer, and what is the core problem that you try to solve for this core customer? Now, not every single one of your core customers is going to be a core customer. That's okay, but it is really important to understand who the ideal, the best core customer is. And very often companies have too broad of a vision of their customers. You know, anybody who wants to pay money for my services is my customer. That is way too big. And having such a broad definition means that we are going to have a wrong understanding of the real issue that we are solving for the core customer. Once we have a good definition of the core customer, a good understanding, and a good understanding of the problem we solve for this customer, the next step is to understand who our competitors are, and to understand their competencies and how these competencies compare to our competencies now and in the future on the things that matter for our core customer. And typically when you go through this exercise, you will notice a number of white spaces, things that are important to customers, but that are not well served by competitors. And the third key question is obviously related to the economic engine or money. Where can we make money? If we solve a problem important to our customers, but in a way that we cannot make money, this is not going to be a very sustainable business. Now, this is one way of looking at strategy. There are many ways, and you know, I'm not saying that this one is the best one. This is kind of an alternative way of looking at the product market fit. But once you have defined this, regardless how you think about strategy, the outcome of this exercise is going to be a list of 3 to 5 differentiated activities, strategic priorities that you absolutely want to nail in order to achieve your goal. And that is what you really want to achieve, these 3 to 5 strategic priorities or differentiated activities. Now, once we have that, so here's an example. It's an easy example, and obviously your businesses are very different. But this is a digital marketing company. They started a few years ago. They have many competitors, and obviously many potential customers. But they realized that their core business or their core customer are local small businesses that need leads. So it's not about e-commerce, it's about lead generation and small customers. Their competitors are a lot of marketing agencies, but they realized that very often these large marketing agencies cannot really serve these small local customers because they are just too expensive. So one of the key differentiating activities that they have developed is a way to streamline their process so that they can offer big agency quality for a much lower price on a a specific set of services. And that makes them that puts them in a very unique position. Now, one of the key to develop and improve on this position for them is to increase the volume. The more clients they have, the cheaper the products they can offer, which is their competitive advantage. So growth is part of their competitive advantage. In order to grow, they decided that the best way was to franchise their business. So they've developed the business model, and now they are going to go out, recruit franchisees who will sell their services while leveraging the agency engines that they have put together. Now, that is one of the strategic priorities that they've defined. We need to franchise our business model. So once they've defined that, they are going to put this into a plan, and this is not rocket science, you know, quarter per quarter, what do we need to work on in order to achieve this strategic goal? And the fact that this plan is quarterly is not by accident. It is simply due to the fact that quarterly priorities are just the most efficient way of executing a strategy. And that leads us to the core of what we want to discuss today, the execution. How do we make sure that when we have a strategy, we are going to implement it? And that is often where the issue is. It is we have a nice plan, we know where we're going, but we are not going there. Now, there are three key execution disciplines to ensure that your strategy is going to be implemented. The first discipline is about priorities. Every quarter, set 2 to 3 clear quarterly priorities. And I'm going to come back to that. The second discipline is about the ability to measure your progress on a weekly basis on each of these 2 or 3 priorities. And the third discipline is about meetings. Meetings are actually the cornerstone of accountability when implementing priorities. So let's start with the first discipline, which is priorities. Priorities help us stay focused. And that is why it is so important to put them on paper. Priorities help us avoid the shiny object syndrome. Today, I think that this is the most important thing I should work on. And next week, something else will happen, and that is going to be my new priority. That is why making sure that we have the right priorities upfront is so important. Now, there are 2 key things to have proper priorities. The first one is you should have no more than 2 or 3 quarterly priorities. And very often I come across teams, and I've been like that before, and naturally we're all like that. So I come across teams that tell me, you know, 2 or 3 is way too few. We have so much things to do, so many things to do. We need at least 5 or 10 priorities. And by the way, we are not just like any stupid client. We are smarter. We are better. Look at this team. These are smart, bright individuals. We can make it. And then a month later, they realize that they have way too many priorities. They are not making the progress that they want. So 2 or 3 is not by accident. It is actually the ideal number of quarterly priorities. And the acid test to define whether something should make it as a priority is when you are at the end of the quarter and you look back and you have achieved this priority. Can you say, because you have achieved this priority, that you have had a good quarter? If the answer is, well, actually, if we achieve this, then it's going to be okay, but not great, then probably that should not be one of your priorities. So the first rule is limit the number of priorities. The second rule related to priorities is alignment among the team. It's a little bit like when we were children, we would pull on a rope as a team. And the most efficient way to pull on the rope is when every single child is perfectly aligned. Everyone pulls exactly in the same direction. As soon as one of the children pulls a little bit more to the left or to the right, it makes the whole team weaker. And that is exactly the same in a business in terms of priorities. People have the best intentions in the world. 99.9% of people have the best intentions for the business. However, when we are not completely aligned on key priorities, people are going to go in different directions with the best intentions, but as a result, the whole team is weaker. And that is exactly one of the reasons why companies don't achieve all their priorities. So one of the key questions I like to ask, and I'm going to ask you to reflect on this question. Imagine I would come to your company, and regardless how many people are in your business, it can be one person, two people, whatever. And imagine I would ask each of your leaders or each of your team members individually the following question. What are the top 3 priorities that this company should focus on this quarter? How many different answers would I get? So feel free to unmute or put it in the chat. When you think of this question, for your specific company, how many different answers would I get?
Does anyone want to share? Oh, we have a solopreneur. One different answer. Okay. Yeah, it looks like mostly solopreneurs here, but
that's fine. That's completely fine. Even for solopreneurs, this is an important question. What are your top 2 to 3 priorities for this specific quarter? And often it adds a lot of value to just take 10 seconds and do it right now to put your top 2 to 3 priorities for this quarter on paper. And see how many you truly have, and if you don't have more than 3. All right, once you are done with this very short list of key priorities, and I encourage you to do this exercise before each quarter. So now, you've done it for Q3, but at the end of September or mid-September, do the same for Q4 to make sure that you are clear on what you want to have achieved by the end of this quarter. Now, once you have identified the key priorities, and you're in agreement with your team or just with yourself, the next step is to make sure that you define them properly. And one way to do this is through OKRs. Now, I can briefly go through OKRs if it is helpful. But if you know OKRs already and you are kind of bored of them, I mean, you know everything about them, we can simply skip this part. So tell me whether you want me to go through it briefly or whether you're good with it.
We have some interest in going through it.
Sorry, say that again?
Oh, yeah, going through it would be great.
All right. So OKRs came up, I think, in the 70s, not from the startup world, actually, from pretty large companies, but they have spread across the country, coming initially from California and across the world. And what I like about OKRs is it is a relatively simple but powerful way to phrase priorities and make them more impactful. OKR stands very simply for objectives and key results. And it works in 2 steps. The first step is to define objectives. Now, an objective, so you have one objective for one priority. So for 2 priorities, you would have 2 objectives. So your objective for this priority provides clarity on the intent and direction. So it answers the question, what do you want to achieve? Why is it important? Having a clear objective for your priority will help you make decisions down the road when you are deep in the weeds of the priority. Let me give you an example. Imagine that one of your priorities is we need to put a website together for the company. That is a pretty lousy priority. because it could be anything. It could mean, well, we need a website because we want to sell things, or because we want to attract investors, or whatever. It could be any kind of website. It can be a simple website, an expensive one, you know. So clarifying what you want to achieve with your website is going to help drastically. So you can say, for instance, I want a website, and the first objective of my website is to attract investors. Or the first objective is to attract leads from potential customers. Or the first objective is to increase the conversion rate because we are an e-commerce platform. And I've seen that times and times again with larger companies. They state we are going to build a new website. They spend hundreds and thousands of dollars in building a new website, and towards the end they realized that they actually did not agree on the objective of the website. Was the objective to make something beautiful, and or make something that sells better, and or something that increases brand awareness or whatever? So clarifying the objective and the intent ahead of time is absolutely critical to make sure to invest money and resources in the right things. So the objective is kind of answering the why of the priority, which will make the what more impactful. Once you have the objective, you go to the key results, and typically for each priority you have one objective, and you have 3 to 4 key results. And key results help you measure whether you are achieving your goal. So they quantify success. Typically, you want key results to be phrased in terms of outcome, so the value you create, and not in terms of output. So outcome is the impact you have. Output is purely the tasks that you have to go through. So let me give you a couple of examples to illustrate objectives and key results. So this is a company. Imagine they want to launch a marketing campaign. On the left side, you have a lousy objective: launch the new marketing campaign. It is not exciting, and it doesn't tell you the kind of marketing campaign you want, or what you want to achieve with this. And then you have key results that are expressed as activities, but we have no clue what we want to achieve, and therefore, you know, these send 3 emails. It can be any kind of emails, because seriously, we don't have any direction here. On the right side, you have the same priority, but phrased as an OKR. So the objective is generate quality leads. All right, so that is pretty clear. We don't want this new marketing campaign. I mean, the main objective is not for this new marketing campaign to generate immediate sales or to generate brand awareness or whatever. It is specifically to generate quality leads, and quality means that the sales team can then convert them into a growing business. And then in terms of key results, in this case, we have 4 key results. Well, we want to increase conversion rate. We want to increase the number of leads. We want a certain click-through rate, and we want something in terms of web traffic. And that means that on the left side, we say, you know, we want 3 emails specifically. On the right side, we say, I don't care how many emails we need to send. This is what we want to achieve. Do we need to send 2 emails or 20 emails? Well, you know, it doesn't. We will start with 2, and then if we need to increase, we are going to increase, because these are the key results we want to achieve. And the same in terms of blog. If you just say, okay, we need to write 1 blog within the framework of this marketing campaign, it could be any kind of blog, but with these objectives and key results clarified, it is pretty clear the kind of blog that you should write or the kind of blog that you should not write. Another example, hiring, and one of the issues that was mentioned in the questionnaire that we discussed up front was, you know, I have issues hiring and retaining the right talents. Well, so on the right side, you have here again a lousy objective and key results, and on the left side, you have an objective that is phrased in a way that you understand the kind of profile we want. The objective is attract and retain top talent to enable business growth in 2021. So number 1, we want profiles, regardless of roles, that are going to be growth minded. And number 2, it is in 2021. So we don't want high level strategic people, not yet, not right now. We need people who can generate growth in the short term. Before I move on, do you have any questions or comments?
What does the employee net promoter score mean?
Oh, sorry. Thank you very much, Jerry. Good to see you, by the way. So the net promoter score is a way to measure employee satisfaction in a way that is often, not always, more actionable than purely satisfaction. It is typically correlated with employee loyalty. All right, let's move on. So the first point we've discussed to make sure that to help implement the strategy is to set clear priorities. And we discussed two rules. The first rule is maximum 2 to 3 priorities. And the second rule is make these priorities super crystal clear, for instance, using the OKR methodology to phrase them. The second execution discipline is metrics. Metrics enable you on a weekly basis to track your progress on each of these quarterly priorities. Now, everybody is different and every company is different. I'm going to show here just one way to do this, but I've seen other ways. For instance, I've seen a company, it's actually one of my clients. They obviously need to grow the business, and they have this list of 100 potential clients, the biggest clients in their industry, and they need to call every single one of them in the next 3 months. So what they've decided to do is, instead of doing a boring dashboard on a screen, they put a vase in the middle of the office, and every time they call one of these leads, they put a green ball in the vase. And every day they want 3 new balls in the vase. And what the CEO told me is, you know, at the end of the day, it is just satisfying to see the vase with 3 additional balls. And at the end of every week, they want 15 new balls in the vase, and that is how they track progress on this specific priority. Now, this is, you know, it works for them. It's not going to work for everybody. This is one way to do this. Another way to do this, if you cannot put numbers on a priority, is to break down each quarterly priorities into 13-week sprints. Why 13 weeks? Well, simply because there are 13 weeks in one quarter. And so define, in this case, the tasks that you want to execute on each of the weeks. This method enables you at the end of every week to go back to your team or to yourself, honestly, and keep yourself honest and say, all right, so at the beginning of the quarter, we decided that in week 4, we were going to do this activity. Did you do this? Yes or no? If no, why? Which help do you need? What do you need to do differently in the future? And what are you going to do next week to achieve the priority, the activity you were supposed to do last week, and the activity that you have to do next week according to the plan? This very simple tool enables you to keep everybody on your team, including yourself, honest. One of the toughest part of executing a strategy is we have all these day-to-day activities that come across our desks and clutter our days, and this plan helps us declutter our lives. And you can see, if you do this, that the work you need to do to achieve your priority, the work you need to do on a weekly basis, is actually not that much work. So it is doable, even though you have a lot of work already. The difference is, with this method, you will have a much higher likelihood to achieve your priority at the end of the quarter. All right. One last thing about this 13-week plan. Often when I mention this to clients, the first reaction is, wait a minute. I mean, I need at least 2 weeks to put together a 13-week plan for each of the priorities. And what I love doing is give them just 15 minutes to put together a 13-week plan for each of their priorities. And they think it is not possible. And then 15 minutes later, they have a plan. The plan is not perfect, but honestly, it doesn't matter. It can be refined a little bit later. At least you have something to work off, and you know what you need to do next week and the following week in order to get going. So the first execution discipline is set clear priorities, maximum 2 or 3. The second execution discipline is have metrics in place to track your progress on a weekly basis. The third execution discipline is meetings. Meetings are often where organizations become unhealthy. And meetings are necessary even for solopreneurs, kind of a meeting with yourself. Have the discipline to have a meeting on a regular basis to discuss what needs to discuss, and I'm going to explain what it is on the next slide. The thing is, what we typically do is we tend to have what Patrick Lencioni calls a meeting stew. So it's like a cook taking all the ingredients from the kitchen and putting them in one large pot, and then wondering why the food is not that good. Well, that seems very obvious for a cook, but it is exactly what we do in a lot of weekly staffing meetings, where we put everything we need to discuss in a meeting: strategy, tactics, the talents, people, I mean, everything. We put that in the same meeting, and then we wonder why this is such a bad, boring meeting. And that is often what I hear from people, you know, our meetings are boring, they are ineffective, they take way too much time. And I'm just longing for the end of the meeting because I have real work to do. Well, on the next slide, I want to explain one way of looking at meetings and making meetings much more effective. And the key is to make sure that you have a specific goal and agenda for each of your meetings. So here is how it works. You start with daily meetings. And yes, daily as in every single day. And even if you have a lot of work, you need to do these daily meetings, even if it is just with yourself. What people realize is by doing this, they actually gain time after some time. So this daily meeting is 5 to 10 minutes maximum. And the goal is to synchronize the team or synchronize yourself if you work by yourself. There are only 3 agenda topics and not more than that: what's up, heads up, and stuck. So what's up is, what is your #1 priority of the day? Often people are not clear about their #1 priority of the day. And so because we ask them this question in the meeting, it forces them to think through, all right, what is the one thing I want to achieve today? If a lot of things happen, if I have a lot of crises and I need to change my plans, nonetheless, I want to achieve this one priority. Heads up is something that happened yesterday or earlier today, and that the rest of the team needs to be aware of. It may not require any action, but it's purely information sharing. And stuck is, I have this problem. I couldn't work on my priority yesterday because I was stuck. I need help, or I don't need help. But here again, I'm going to inform the team about this. And the key to this, to a successful daily huddle, is that everybody has to come prepared to the meeting, so that it's, you know, every person takes 30 to 60 seconds we go around the room pretty quickly, and we don't solve problems. We identify problem in this meeting, but we don't solve them. And that is often really tough for the CEO because, you know, as CEOs, we want to solve problems. It's kind of our core business. But in this case, discipline is really key. you cannot solve problem in this meeting. You can convene a different meeting with only the right people, or you can discuss the problem in the weekly meeting, but not in the daily meeting. And that helps keep the daily meeting at to maximum 10 minutes, which is what you want. Otherwise, it takes too much time and people get bored in the meeting and they don't want to participate. The second meeting is a weekly meeting. The goal of this meeting is to hold people accountable. And that is the meeting where you discuss the status of the priorities and the KPIs, based, for instance, on the 13-week plan. This is what you were supposed to do last week. Did you do it or not? And what will you do next week? And this is the meeting where we solve problems. Some of the problems that were identified at the daily huddle. And it's typically, you want to solve 1 or 2 problems, not 5 or 10. This is not the meeting where you discuss strategy. If you have strategic ideas or input on strategy, you put it on a sheet of paper and you don't discuss them in this meeting. And making sure that you discuss the right topics in the right meetings is key to holding these meetings short, sweet, and to the point. The next one is a monthly meeting, and that is when we start talking about strategy. The goal of this meeting is to course correct when needed. So you have your quarterly priorities. Everything is based on these quarterly priorities. And once a month, you are going to discuss these quarterly priorities and see where you are. So this is where you notice that is where you discuss that we are late on the quarterly priorities and what are we going to do to catch up. This is where, especially at the beginning, you notice that you have too many priorities and you decide to reprioritize. This is where sometimes you notice that you have the wrong priority. You have 3 priorities and one of them is just the wrong one. That's okay. This is the right time to stop this priority, and if needed, launch a new one. And the last one is the quarterly meeting, where you discuss the quarterly priorities, and you analyze how the past quarterly priorities went and what needs to be done differently in the future. You define the new quarterly priorities for the upcoming quarter. You revise, if needed, the vision, the long-term and medium-term vision on the company's strategy. That is where you discuss talent where needed, and that is where you do executive education, because no company can grow faster in the long run than the pace of self-development of its leaders. Now, you notice that reviewing and improving the vision is done on a quarterly basis. If you have a brilliant idea during a weekly meeting, the tough part and the discipline is not to start debating it in the weekly meeting. You can decide to have your quarterly meeting a bit earlier, something like that, but not pollute these meetings with things that have nothing to do with them. And the same is true with quarterly meetings. This is not the place where you discuss small tactical stuff, regardless how tempting it can be to discuss these. So which questions do you have so far, or which comments do you have?
Well, Xavier, I can see this applies to a ho-hum business, one like everything else. I don't see how it applies to a highly innovative business where you're constantly solving problems, and you can't wait 3 months to solve a problem. So do you have a different strategy for highly innovative, creative businesses?
So thank you very much for your question. And I'm sorry if I wasn't very clear. So problem solving cannot be done in the daily huddle, but it can be done in the weekly meeting. If it can wait until the weekly meeting, and if it cannot wait, then a good approach is simply to reconvene a separate meeting, but just with the right people. The issue is the daily huddle typically has the whole team. So you don't want to waste people's time by discussing a problem that only pertains to half the team. Is this an answer to your question?
Yes, thank you.
I was just wondering if you had the templates for these images you're putting up that we could use.
You mean the slides?
Yeah, the slides, but if you had like the last slide had like a template set up that we could enter. Yeah.
Yeah, I can absolutely send that to Jason, who will who can spread it.
Yeah, happy to send that out. Yeah, and then a question there too is on I guess it's more on the strategy on the OKRs piece, but is there, or if some of your goals, like you need to have, you know, in order to achieve your quarterly goals, you need to have 50% of it done by a certain point in the quarter. You know, how do you manage? It's not always like linear, what needs to get done in what order. So yeah, how do you manage that, the decisions there?
Yes, very good, very good points. So that is something that's that varies by team. Honestly, I have a client who likes numbers in terms of key results. And even the priorities that I'm thinking, like, how can you put numbers on this thing? He manages to put numbers on it. And for some reason, he makes them completely linear. And for some of these key results, you might be thinking, I mean, this is not linear. You should be 50% after 1 month, and then the remaining 50% in the next 2 months. The truth is, often it does not really matter. Except if time is super important, but you can, you know, you can you can have all kind of different shapes to your goal curves and make it, you know, kind of 50% very soon and then the remaining a little bit later. Often spending too much time on kind of micromanaging how these key results are going to be laid out is not really worth it. The best way is to, you know, to just to put it on paper and then get going. And if you notice that there's a real issue that, you know, the curve should really be a bit more complex than purely a line, then it is worth spending a bit of time on this.
Perfect. Yeah, and then last question on my side is there a preferred time of day for the daily huddle and the weekly meetings?
Oh, yes. Thank you very much. I forgot about that. Yes, the preferred time of day is at the beginning of the day. If the team starts at 9, do it at 9. If they start at 8, do it at 8. Because this way you have nothing else during the day. I mean, this doesn't come kind of in the middle of the day. If you have a team, it also helps the CEO make sure that he or she is aligned with the priorities of the team for that day. Because it can happen, you know, imagine I'm on your team. My number one priority based on my own plan and my own life is to work on this project. But you as a CEO, you have other information, you know, of this client that has an urgent need. And then this is the opportunity for you to tell me, you know what, I understand you understand your point. It's very smart. But today, can you please work on that instead? And you notice that this daily huddle, thanks to that, replaces a lot of informal water cooler conversations with the added benefit of having everybody in the room and everybody is informed that my priority is shifting from here to here. And a third colleague might say, oh, wait, but if you're not working on this, then it's going to be an issue for me, so I need to adjust. So the beginning of the day is the best time of the day.
Xavier, have you had to adjust any of this due to COVID and people working from home, having to deal with kids at home, et cetera, et cetera?
So I have not heard of kid issues, but I'm pretty sure they happen. The one thing I've noticed with COVID is that this COVID makes this even more important because I noticed 2 key questions, especially at the beginning of COVID. The first question was, all right, people are going to work from home. Are they going to do their job? Are they going to be accountable? And number 2, now that we don't see each other, we don't communicate as well. And having this disciplined, structured way of organizing meetings is actually a very good way to make sure that everybody is aware of what everybody is doing, that everybody is accountable, without putting too many meetings in people's agendas or people's calendars.
Thank you.
So a couple of other things regarding accountability, or how to make sure that we execute on the strategy. And these tips come from this really good book, Creating a Culture of Accountability. It's written by a colleague of mine, Mark Green. It's a thin book. It's only 47 pages. So it's a quick read, but it's extremely practical. So a couple of tips is obviously lead by example, at least if you have a team, even for the small stuff. And the thing is, all eyes and ears of the business are focused on you, even when you don't notice it. The second thing about leading by example is you lead by example by your own behavior, but you also lead by tolerating other people's behaviors. If you want people to be on time, for instance, for the meetings, obviously you need to be on time yourself, but how do you react when somebody is not on time? If you say nothing and it happens on a, on a regular basis, then the message you are sending to the rest of the team is, you know what, it's okay to be late. If you make a comment like, can you please be on time because the meeting started at 9, you make it clear to the rest of the team, not just to that individual, that the expectation is to start on time. The next one is about formal accountability. So each priority should have only one person accountable. One person can have 2 priorities, especially in a small team, but one priority should have just one person accountable. As soon as you have more than one, like, oh, these 2 people are going to work on this priority, that is a recipe for failure. It might not fail, but there's a bigger risk that things may fail. Now, the person accountable for that one priority is not necessarily the one who is going to do all the work on the priority, but that is the one who, so to speak, will lose sleep at night if the priority is not moving in the right direction, and honestly will get the credit if the priority is done as it should. So in other words, have the right people in the right seats. I would encourage you to read this book. It's a quick read and honestly a pretty good one. Thank you very much for your attention. We have I think 10 minutes left. Which other questions can I answer?
I think that was, great. Yeah, really enjoyed the presentation here and the questions that came in so far. I guess, yeah, to kick off a question, and then, anybody else that wants to jump in. But yeah, I was thinking, there's startups that, you work on the growth side, and startups grow, really quickly, from 1 employee to a handful to, dozens of employees. And do the types of meetings stay the same throughout, or, is there a different process of who's involved that when you're growing pretty quickly there?
Thank you. So a couple of things. First, yes, the types of meetings remain the same, but the key question is the one you just asked, which is who should be involved in each meeting. At the beginning, everybody's involved in the daily huddle, but as soon as your team is like 10, 20 people, you don't want a huddle with 10 or 20 people. So, and the same with a weekly meeting. So one way to do this, and here again, each company is different, but one way to do this is to have a daily huddle with the leadership team. Imagine you have 2 or 3 leaders and 20 remaining employees. So they do a daily huddle just among the 3 of them. And then each of them does a daily huddle with their own team. The golden rule is nobody should be involved in more than 2 daily huddles. Otherwise, it's just a waste of time. And the same with the weekly meeting. You know, at the beginning, you can have everybody on the team. But as the team grows quickly, you know, at some point, people will start saying, you know, this is just not for me. I don't have enough input in this conversation. And that's when it is time to refocus the weekly meeting to only the leadership team. And then each leader can have a more tactical meeting with their own team. The second thing I would mention is as soon as a company starts growing, it quickly becomes a giant mess. And that's why implementing this discipline, even though it might look like overkill, that's why implementing this meeting discipline and this discipline around priorities ahead of time is so important. The most difficult part is to make it a discipline, to create this habit. And it's easier to create a habit when you have just 1, 2, or 3 people in a company than when you have 20 or 30 people.
Great. And do you invite advisors and board members to the monthly or quarterly meetings, or just the core management team?
I think it depends. I'm working with a client where the board is extremely hands-on, and they take part in not in the weekly meetings, but in the monthly and quarterly meetings. And I have other clients where the advisors have more role of business developer, and their input in these meetings is less prevalent.
Perfect. Appreciate that. Yeah, any other questions? And yeah, Xavier, what's the, I know, yeah, you mentioned, you know, you're going to share the slides we went over. I can send them out to everyone that joined us as well. What's the best way to connect with you and, you know, yeah, connect with all the resources and guidance that you're offering?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to put my phone number and my email address in the chat. Oops, to everybody. And I'm happy to continue the conversation individually, you know, and to help you assess your own growth roadblocks, which might be linked to execution and alignment on strategy or not, and have an individual conversation with each of you. So I've just sent my my email address and my phone number. It's a California phone number, but I'm located in Connecticut, so we are in the same time zone.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Thanks for all the advice here. And then everybody on the on the Prepare for VC and Startup Grind side, you know, if you haven't already, I posted our communities in the chat. We'll be sharing some more, or there are some more events lined up on the Prepare for VC community page. Next week we have one, an IP strategy discussion, and in the process of scheduling a couple on the Startup Grind event page as well. So yeah, and also, you know, happy to reach out, talk to any of your startups and see what other resources and tools from any of our partners we can connect you with. And yeah, glad to connect following this chat as well. Thanks everyone for joining. I'll be sharing the link on our YouTube channel and out to everybody that joined as well to go back and check out the recording.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank
Xavier.
you.
Thanks, Jason.
Thanks.
Bye.